All right. You know the type of people who, when something just like unexpected or like a crisis happens, and they just stay completely calm and level-headed, and they just never seem just like remotely shook by what just went down? Well, I am the complete just opposite of that person. My heart starts pumping. I freak out. My mind kind of like festers on all of the horrible worst case scenarios. It's just like, it's a fucking nightmare. And I mean, think about the people who go into like crisis management as for like a career, right? They literally are inserting themselves in other people's problems and trying to find ways to solve them. For example, one of my favorite characters in the Quentin Tarantino like sphere is Winston Wolfe in Pulp Fiction. He's the cleaner who comes in after Vincent accidentally shoots Marvin in the face. But this dude just drops everything that he's doing, gets presented with a problem, and is told he's got 40 minutes on the clock to basically handle it. And not only does he handle it, but throughout the 10-minute scene or whatever it is, he manages to enjoy a cup of coffee, a smoke. He takes a smoke. He has a few laughs. He makes plans for a little breakfast date afterwards, and then also gets some like well-deserved compliments for a job well done. And he doesn't stress. He doesn't yell. There are absolutely just zero signs of anxiety for him. And from the first time I've watched this movie to the 100th, I have always kind of like admired this character, because when a crisis just like comes my way, I just melt, man, and anxiety just kind of takes over. But anxiety is defined as a feeling of worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. For me personally, I think it differs a little bit from something like a high pressure moment. I can handle pressure okay, because I think in most cases, I'm typically the one who's putting myself into those situations. So for example, like let's say you're playing a high pressure game and it's coming down to the end, like those are moments I enjoy. Or if you're arguing with someone and tensions are rising, there's a general like ramp up to that moment. Or another example is like an interview, right? Like sure, I will get a little bit anxious leading up to it, but it's not like all out anxiety, because I think there's a process to it that I am agreeing to. Essentially, you apply, you schedule the interview, you think of potential questions that you're going to be asked. There's a general progression to it. When anxiety really kind of affects me is when there's like this quick, just like unexpected turn of events. It can be the smallest thing that throws me off. For example, the other night, like my dog, for example, he threw up twice, which is obviously not a normal thing for him to do. And my mind just went from like 0 to 100 really fast. Like, is he sick? Should I try to give him something else? We just moved. I don't know where a good vet is. We just got new insurance for him too, but I don't think we received his paperwork yet. What if like this goes on all night? What am I supposed to do? And within 30 seconds, I've basically just reached the conclusion that he's dying, right? Of course, he's totally fine. I don't know what his deal was that night, but it just completely ruined my night. Like my dog throwing up ruined a normal, good weeknight for me, which sounds absolutely insane to say. Like it's idiotic. But with all of this said, I'm trying to pay closer attention to recognizing these anxiety-filled moments and just fucking calming down. Like something happened a few weeks ago, and my wife was even like, whoa, you really spiraled fast there. And I did, which I hate, because I want to be able to take on those moments, I guess, and not let them affect me so much, one, in the moment, but two, like long term. Have you ever heard of this saying, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sails? It's about how you react to the situations you find yourself in and not letting your emotions, I guess, really get the best of you. And that's what I'm shooting for here. Now, I'm kind of just putting this under the blanket statement of anxiety, right? I've never really talked much about anxiety outside of this podcast, I'd say, or how I'm trying to like deal with it. I've never sought like professional help for it. I've gaslit people about their own anxieties. Those moments when you tell your wife to like just relax, like saying that is gonna completely solve the issue, but it just ends up making them more mad. Like those are great moments. But obviously this discussion about anxiety is becoming increasingly more accepted, I'd say, in today's culture. I mean, look at things like Inside Out 2. It's a children's movie that's addressing the feeling or emotions of anxiety. And for adults, this is the most relatable character because so many people struggle with this feeling in today's society. Another example are these like award-winning TV shows within the last few years. Let's look at The Bear, for example. From their personal lives to their work lives, this whole television show is just based around them trying to handle their anxiety. Or Ted Lasso is a super popular show, right? Just a dude kind of putting on a mask to stay positive while underneath he's just this massive ball of anxiety. But as this topic becomes more mainstream, I guess we can call it, there's a debate whether anxiety is getting more common or are we just getting kind of softer as a society? And I can honestly see the argument with both sides. You've got one group of people who are basically saying that younger generations are turning into a bunch of wusses, right? Because of things like participation trophies, time spent online or on social media. They don't have a strong backbone because they lack like these face-to-face interactions, or maybe they're too open about like their mental health and attribute all of their personal problems to like trauma, right? You can even criticize the shift in like parenting styles. And if you look at it from, let's call it a more like scientific perspective, I've also heard some people make the case that satisfying our basic needs has just become so easy now that the average American has more time on their hands, allowing their mind to kind of wander more and actively kind of like search out for problems that they come up with for themselves. But then you've got the other group of people who are performing studies and saying, no, like that's not the case. Anxiety levels are actually increasing. And in the little research that I've done, like looking into this topic for this podcast, it's super interesting to hear why younger generations are supposedly more anxious. There's even a book that got released earlier this year that I found in my research that I did that I look forward to listening to, and it's called The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And the author basically attributes this to the rise of smartphones and the overprotective parenting in the early 2000s. But if I specifically look back at like the major events or movements, let's call them, throughout my lifetime, you got multiple terrorist attacks and mass shootings, war in the Middle East, record high divorce rates, the Great Recession. I think there's an increase in academic pressures, a global pandemic. Now inflation is through the roof, right? And you've got an extremely just divided country right now. And then on top of that, you're basically told every 5 seconds that the fucking planet is burning and there's really not much that we can do. And when you list off all these things one by one, like I just did, it sounds like a lot to unpack. Now, who's to say if it's better or worse than other generations? But because of the quote-unquote anxiety caused by these outcomes, many late millennials and Gen Zs are kind of delaying these major life milestones. They're holding off on getting married, they're not having children, or even like buying homes, for example. And like I said before, I can relate to both sides of the argument, right? Yes, there's been a lot to overcome, but I think we're also kind of allowing this trauma to definitely affect us more long term than we need to. And I look back at my like life on a personal level, and it's been pretty easy. There's been no major struggles or real reasons why I have like an increased level anxiety that I currently do. But in my little research time that I did, there was one quote that I liked that stated, the generation as a whole is among the most educated it has ever been, but the path to success is also less clear. which I really, I agree with. I think if you want to be successful, you need to, one, put forth a lot more effort because there's just so much more competition in today's day and age. And two, you really need a solid understanding of kind of what you want in life because there are just so many more avenues to success, I think, in today's society than there ever have been. But long story short, though, I'm not really sure as to what is causing this increased level anxiety and is got me so fucking unhinged lately. But I'm trying to implement kind of like some small daily things to get me back on track. One thing that I started a week ago now has been Wendy Suzuki's 13-minute meditation, which was a super interesting study if you want to look into it. It's kind of making me realize how horrible I am at just trying to maintain my focus on something for more than 30 seconds too. But yeah, I mean, overall things are good. I'm just so on edge and I want to kind of find a way to quiet my mind sometimes, which is a lot to ask, I guess. But anyways, I think that's it. I think this debate whether anxiety is getting more common or if we're just getting like weaker as a society is kind of fascinating. I think it's hard to definitively like choose a side. Yeah, with that, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'll talk to you next week.